what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it.
Mentioned Brian Kelly. He sat down with Jacques Doucet, and I believe this was yesterday. And there is one quote about NIL, obviously the defensive line, that has really gained steam on social media. It's BK talking about what LSU's plan is when it comes to the portal and developing players.
Somebody said when you buy a player, they own you.
Well, they also have to understand that they're walking into a locker room with a cloud over them as well. You know, when you're making those decisions, I have to factor in everybody who's sitting in these seats here, you know, and everybody, including, you know, my offensive linemen who are the bell cows, who have been playing for me over the last 3 years as freshmen and sophomores and juniors. What about them?
So there's a deep conversation that Brian Kelly got into about, you know, buying players and compared to just getting players through high school, developing those players. And a lot of people were, you know, questioning maybe, well, why wouldn't you go buy a player? And he's been out front about what he's going to do as the head coach and what his plan is and the development of those players. I think there's a little bit of a longer answer. Do we have that one? All right, we'll get that one as well because, look, he is, like I said, he's been out front about kind of, and they talk about the path and the process and what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And so there was a couple of defensive tackles out there that whatever report that you look at, Oklahoma, Miami, and what they did with those defensive tackles. But here is that longer answer from Brian Kelly about buying players.
Well, I think I made it pretty clear in a number of the press conferences that I had that we were in the market in recruiting in the transfer portal looking for defensive linemen. It hasn't fared very well, quite frankly, because, you know, we're selling something a little bit differently, and that is we want to recruit. We want to engage, build relationships. We want to develop, retain, and have success. We're not in the market of buying players, and unfortunately, right now, you know, that's what some guys are looking for. They want to be bought. And look, I understand NIL is part of this, and we have an incredible collective. We have very, very generous opportunities around the greater Baton Rouge area for NIL opportunities. So they are here, but we're not going to go out and buy players. That's not what this is about. This was never about that. We will develop you. We will get you ready for the next step, as we did with Jaden Daniels, as we did with Malik Neighbors, as we did with Brian Thomas. We developed 3 defensive linemen that all got drafted this year, and we'll do that again. But if you're just looking to get paid, you're looking in the wrong place. If you like all the things that we do here in developing our players, bringing you into a championship program, playing in front of the best fan base in America, playing for championships, and having an opportunity for NIL, you should be a Tiger. But if you just want to get you know, paid, this is not the place for you.
I actually agree with Brian Kelly. And I know that some fans are like, wait a minute, why would you not go and buy players? And it's because of the things that he just said. You brought in Bo Davis, who's one of the best, if not the best, defensive line coaches in America. You brought him in to develop players. That's what you brought him in for. He's done it at Alabama. He's done it at Texas. He's done it everywhere he's ever been. Right. And so, like, that is your hope that he takes, let's say, you know, 5-star player like Don McKinley. Like, that's who we're talking about here. Gabe Relaford, 4-star player. That's who we're talking about here. Like, that's why you bring in a Bo Davis. Now, if you supplement those guys, because you did with Mekhi Wingo a couple of years ago, you bring him in from Mizzou. Mekhi Wingo wasn't here for a payday. He wasn't here for that one-time payday, and that's all he was worried about. Like, Mekhi Wingo came here for a reason, and you know, they played for an SEC championship game that year, and like different reasons. Like Jordan Jefferson comes here, and he comes from West Virginia, where nobody really knew who he was. When he first got here, everybody's like, oh, he's got the same name as the quarterback. And then he turned himself into someone that got invited to the Senior Bowl and got drafted in the 4th round. Like, that's why he came here. those are the reasons why you want someone to come to your school. And I know that people think, oh, LSU's falling behind. That's not it. You can go to On3, and they've got the amounts of money that everyone has in the NIL space and how much they have to spend. LSU's very competitive in that. They're top 10 in that. They've got money to spend, but they want to be smart about the money that they spend. So if you're a player in the portal that wants a cash grab instead of coming here developing, that is not what they're looking for. Again, right, wrong, or indifferent, whichever side that you fall on, I can just promise you with conversations like this, like we just heard, and other conversations like, personally, like with some of the LSU coaches, that's not what they're going to do. The defensive tackle situation they're in right now, it's not one you ever want to be in. I understand that as well. You didn't expect 3 guys that had eligibility to come back to all leave at the same time. They did, and now you're in a bind. And you could make the argument, okay, well, go pay for 1 year of a defensive tackle. But again, if you do that, if you open Pandora's box, can you ever really go back from that? And so that's why you see Oklahoma and Miami outbid you for a couple of defensive tackles. Now, LSU is still in the market for defensive tackles. They still have, fillers out there and probably have offered scholarships to some of those guys that are in the portal, but they weren't going to pay some of the numbers that we're hearing. And I'm not here to be message board guy, but there's some huge numbers out there, like more than the NFL minimum salary offers that these defensive tackles got. So LSU wasn't in that market, and that's why they lost out, and they still continue to try to find a defensive tackle. So, Taylor, obviously you've been locked into this defensive tackle, NIL, transfer portal situation like we all have. I'm not really surprised to hear Brian Kelly say that, and certainly not once T-Bob and we were talking about the other day off the air and some of the numbers that these players got.
No, and I saw a lot of pushback from Kelly's comments yesterday, and people are like, well, you have to be the highest bidder. This is the way of college football. You're getting left out. This shows that LSU doesn't have any money. That's not what Brian Kelly said. You heard him say right there, there are a lot of NIL opportunities. Kelly's pitch is probably going to be, hey, we got Raising Cane's down here. We got the G team down here. You come down here. We have a lot of NIL opportunity, walk-ons. Like, we have a lot of NIL opportunity for you to come down here, but we're not going to write you a blank check. You talked about it. I know exactly what you're talking about. You saw the number of Dominic McKinley yesterday, just like I did. It's ridiculous. You can't offer that guy that much because you have other spots to fill as well, right? This is not NFL free agency. You can't just be like, I'm going to have a $40 million cap hit on this one guy and the rest of my roster suffer from it. That's not what this is. I love the answer from Brian Kelly personally.
Yeah, and he's told you the entire time, like, this is not new. If you've listened to him, this is how he wants to build this program. He's never going to be Lane Kiffin. He's never going to be Deion Sanders. He's never even going to be, someone who brings in the amount of players that Brahms bringing in at Louisville. Like, they've had 2 major transfer portal classes. That's not who they're going to be. Now, he's not going to be Dabo Swinney either. Dabo Swinney and Clemson don't have a single player out of the portal. That's not what he's saying. He's not against the portal. He's certainly not against NIL. He's just not about buying the players. And I'm saying this isn't BK overpaying for some players because they know you've got a position of need. Because, again, you open Pandora's box, you can never close that thing again. This program is going to be built off high school recruiting in the state of Louisiana, which is one of the absolute best in high school recruiting, per capita NFL talent. We talk about it all the time. They want to dominate there, hit their pockets of Texas and Mississippi and Alabama and surrounding areas, and certainly still go into Florida. And they'll go all over the place because Brian Kelly had to do that at Notre Dame. Not as much here, obviously, at LSU, but he'll still go all over the place. And then you'll add 6 to 10, 10 being the absolute, like, a big number, probably more like 4 to 8 players through the portal every single cycle. And that's who you're going to be. You're going to add here and there. You're going to supplement your roster with what you've had from high school, the development of the players, and you're not really going to move away from that. Now, the first year, you had to. And he talked about not liking to be in that position. Wasn't comfortable in that position. That's not who he wanted to be. So it's scaled back. And I'll get the numbers throughout the show. It's scaled back every single year as far as number of players they've added through the portal. The first year, we get it. Your roster, it was horrid as far as the numbers and what you had. We all know, you had less than 40 scholarship players in the Texas Bowl, so you understand that. But after you had that situation, and now this roster looks like, outside of one position, defensive tackle, it is still a position of need and something that is a concern. You've got it kind of where you want it, but it was through the way that you wanted to build this program, not the way that others are building their program. And so It's not going to change. That's going to be the way this program is built until Brian Kelly is no longer the head coach at LSU. And so we'll get those numbers, and maybe we'll take a look at who potentially still is out there, because I still think LSU will add a defensive tackle, just not one where he's going to pay for a player like some of these numbers that we're hearing. And again, like, you might disagree with that, right, wrong, or indifferent. You might say, why would you not overpay this 1 year for that one position? And again, he has told you numerous amounts of times he is not going to do that. The staff is not going to do that.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.